Gediminus, welcome to the podcast. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Dylan. Happy to be here. First time I saw your launching podcast, I wanted to be here, but I was too shy to ask for you, to let me in. So happy you invited me finally.
Yeah, well, it's a long time coming and we got a lot to talk about. How are you feeling about 2022? Are you having a moment of reflection? Are there any goals or resolutions as you look ahead towards 2023?
Oh, 22 was amazing compared to 21, and sometimes when now I do the public speaking, and I'm showing the people, my achievements, 21 is totally empty, for several reasons, like pandemic, my surgery, and some life changes. So 22 was really generous to me. I came back to training, running, racing, traveling around the world, basically the stuff which I like and why I left in 2020. Yeah. So 22 is just, I cannot complain. It's just awesome year, and 23, I guess it will be even better.
Yeah, excellent. Well, let's get around to talking about the trials and tribulations and adversity from 2021 and how you navigated that. But first, let's go further back in your story. First, I'd love to hear just about your Lithuanian heritage. Of course, being from that sort of small, somewhat obscure European country, I'd just love to learn a little bit more about growing up there, the history of the place, and really how being Lithuanian shapes who you are as a person.
Actually, yeah, it's kind of interesting, because Lithuania is for those who doesn't know, it's totally a flat country. We don't have mountains. So a lot of people are surprised when I'm saying, that I started to train on flat, to run great in the mountains. And yeah, further, go back, when I was a kid, I've never liked running, I don't know if it all the runners, had this gene, for running from the beginning, but I never did. And basically all my training, which I did when I was a kid, was just walking around 3 kilometers, from my home, to the school. Yeah. Because kind of, I had a school much closer to me, but my mom was a teacher in that particular school. So we kind of decided, that I need to go and kind of hang out with them, be in the same school. So yeah. So my sacrifice, was that I needed to walk 3 kilometers to the school, 3 kilometers back, and this is my physical background, I was not if you look at my pictures when I was a kid, it is nothing close to the athleticism, I was a little bit chubby, a little bit fat, and I like to eat, really traditional Lithuanian food, potatoes, because all our traditional food is from the potatoes, it's kind of, it came from America, but it stick with Lithuanian culture, and it's easy to keep, easy to cook, so all our traditional dishes like that. Yeah. So I have nothing to do, in my childhood with a sport, and suddenly I'm finishing the school and, I'm thinking what to do in life. And one of my friends says okay, I'm going to join military academy. And I said, okay, what you need to do for that? And he said, it's 3 kilometers run, some exercises, math and blah, blah, blah. And I started kind of think about that, because in my family, we have this military heritage. My grandpa was a officer in the Lithuanian army. We skipped the army times when we were occupied by Soviets, Russia.
Yeah.
And I was kind of, again, continuing traditions, I was about to continue traditions. And so I put all myself, to prepare for this exam. And this is when was the time when I started to run, and I hated it. It just was push-ups, pull-ups, it was not a big deal for me, but running was something really terrifying, and yeah, so I kind of, I entered military academy, and my friend with whom I supposed to study there, he didn't, it's kind of, he freaking out, and he even didn't go, to the academy to pass the exam. So yeah, so this is how I ended up in the military academy, and this is where basically my training, not only physical, but psychological one. Yeah. Kind of my psychological profile started to build up,
Did you go into the military because of your family heritage? And also, you mentioned having grown up in the period of time where there was the Soviet occupation of much of Eastern Europe and living through the reestablishing of independence for your home country of Lithuania, did that play into you enlisting in your army?
Actually, there was like few things, this heritage, yes, was one of the things, the restoration of independence was another one. And my father was like kind of one of the guys who signed the Declaration of Independence. Yeah, he was like a member of parliament. So definitely playing a big role, in my kind of education. But as well, I was not like very focused kid, when I grew up. And actually, when I decided that I want to do something in the life or to go and join any universities, all the exams were gone. The last place where I could actually apply was the military academy. So I had a time to prepare for that. So it's kind of several things, heritage, father, education in the family. And after that, like I was not the best student, and like I needed to do something. So this was my last chance, to do something. Yeah. So this is played like that. And then, then I was a kid, I grew, in the times when the Soviets were still there, because we got our independence just in 89. Yeah. And I was born in 79. So I spent like basically 10 years, in the occupation, which happened like for almost 50 years. And so definitely, to protect the country and like to be ready not to be occupied again, like I kind of made the choice, and I was a officer, in the military like for 20 years. Yeah. And so I did a lot of kind of stuff, I did 2 missions, I did like special operation course, and I think this is kind of prepare me like to become who I am right now. So because
I want to talk more about your specific experience because I think it plays a significant role in the person you are, like you just said, and to the places that you've now arrived at in terms of your athletic career. And I think the audience would really love to learn a little bit more about the story. So eventually you served in Iraq and Afghanistan, if I'm not mistaken, both under the Lithuanian flag and for NATO. And when you were first deployed, I would love to understand the circumstances of your life at that time and what the psychological and emotional reaction was to arriving in a war zone for the first time.
Like when you're young, and you want like still to be a general, and to proceed with your career, like inevitably, like at least in our army, you need to do missions, and I was like young because it was like 2006, 2007, when I applied for a mission on my own. And yeah, for me, like it sounded at first like, like in the movies, it was kind of a military tourism, like going somewhere abroad, experiencing new things, So I didn't think much, what's going to happen there. And I remember the first they arrived to Gediminus in Iraq, where served like Americans, Slovaks, Polish guys, the Moldovians, and like a bunch of like multinational like staff officers and like soldiers. We said like, oh, we had like a lot of attacks here, and they mentioned some kind of a number, I don't remember exactly, but we received like triple of that, during my stay there. And yeah, like saying the numbers, we stayed like basically in 1 kilometer and 1 kilometer camp, and we received like 270 rockets, and like around like 100 mines, into our camp. Like people died, people were injured during the half a year. And yeah, so this kind of my military aventurism, tourism, turn not exactly to what I expected it to be, and obviously, so obviously, like being young, like still having a wife and a kid, now what does it mean, having a kid? I had actually 2, because one was on the way, and I was in Iraq, and Ginter was giving birth to Danielus, and almost died, like the same day or week, like earlier we experienced the attack, which lasted 1 hour, we've been in the shelters, and like, it was kind of like, like super messy. So it plays really badly, with my mind, because you're kind of, you're like adult and you see all these mines and, flying from the sky, and like you see people dying and you can imagine, that maybe it will be you, next time. And when you think
Especially
about
with
family, which you left behind.
Yeah, exactly. I was just saying with the family back at home, that must weigh especially heavily on your mind.
Exactly.
And I'd also love to hear you being an officer in the Army. That I think means that you were in a leadership position. What was your specialization in, and what was your role within the ranks? Because I think one of the things that's comes with leadership, especially in war, is that people's lives are on your hands. And did you feel that responsibility when you were in Iraq?
Yeah, actually in Iraq, I was an intelligence officer. I was analyst, so I was not directly responsible, for the casualties actually on both sides, because I basically provided the information, analyzed information, for the blue forces, which were doing kinetic actions outside, and as well, I was providing information, to save our forces. So I felt responsible, and I knew that information which I possess and which I collect and the briefings which we do, it basically affects a lot of lives around me. So it was the additional stress which I put on myself, and then it was not easy. So at that time I was not working directly, with any a platoon, or squad, but I was dealing with that indirectly.
I felt like I cut you off a little bit as you were sharing some of the details of your deployment. So if there's anything else you want to share, of course, I don't expect you to share any of the uncomfortable details, but I think the audience would be curious to hear what the reality is like from somebody who has actually experienced being in that situation.
I can tell, what I felt, but it's not necessarily, depicts, the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, each day I was waking up, and I was waiting when I'm going to sleep, because it's was the moment, when I have this 3-4 hours of sleep, when I felt okay, because I still were able to sleep, not all the guys, on a mission can sleep, but this was my happy time, and another thing which I discovered, during my deployment, that running helps a lot, because at first when I arrived, I experienced these bad things, I couldn't sleep and I felt a little bit fragile, and I thought what the hell, I have a free time, I cannot sleep, so I'm totally destroyed because my mind, going crazy, I'm all the time tired. And kind of I started to read, what helps, and the running or some other endurance activity, like rowing machine or whatever, they said should help, to make a peace, and to sleep better. So this is how I started to run actually, so in this base, I was doing cycles, sometimes 1, sometimes 2, sometimes 8, and I think at the end of my mission, I did 20 or something, so it was a big progress for me. And this is how actually the running, running came to my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not easy, everyone copes differently, but for me, I don't know, the most tragic experience was that the guys whom I knew, and I spoke, one day, they were not there the other day, so they were gone because something happened, outside the camp. Some of them were just going out of the gym, and the mine exploded, and they were gone. So this is kind of affects you dramatically,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. And for me, the solution for that was just, I don't know, I try to ignore the reality, and running helped me, to be in the happiest place, but when you're running around the camp and you see this the T walls, covered in blood, covered in, shrapnels,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of brings you back, and it's now I can compete with the running, if everything goes well in the race, you're running and you're kind of in the flow, you're happy, you don't know even how you reach, one point to another. But if you have some pain, it doesn't matter, it's mental or physical. And back on a mission, it was more mental pain, it always puts you on the ground, and this is what basically what's going on, there. Yeah, you cannot relax. You're running, you have sounds, some noises, even somebody just, pushing the doors or slamming the doors like much harder, louder, and you're on the ground, like crawling, to the shelter. So yeah. So, it's like small details all the time, remind me that it's not holidays, it's not the militarism, I can die, I cannot see my family anymore, and like I saw all the gone friends, and it kind of, a little bit damaged me, not a little bit, maybe a lot,
Yeah.
and like to. Yeah,
how did your family deal with it? How did your wife deal with it at home with the two young kids, having you overseas deployed in what was obviously a very dangerous situation?
Like she dealt very well. She didn't know what's going on because, then we had a talk, you can imagine that I didn't tell her anything, like I just was smiling, saying everything is all right. It's like, it's always, it's like, I think like all the men, all the people do like that, to protect the families, because I didn't want to put additional stress. She already, were with at first pregnant and then with a little baby, so it do any good, and she anyway cannot help me, so the only solution and the only help I could just expect from myself. And I don't know, even being young, I didn't admit it, to psychologists, or any friends around me, because I think at that time, at least I thought, that it's kind of a weakness, and I cannot speak about that. If I speak about that, probably my career will be over, so these kind of thoughts I had, and I don't think it anymore like this, but when you are young, you're kind of having different ideas about the life, about career, and, how the world works. Yeah? So my family actually didn't know anything till I returned back home. Yeah. But when I returned home, they noticed that I'm not the same,
Yeah.
More sensitive, more anxious,
Let's talk about this, because I think the audience would really be interested to hear about your experience with PTSD. And you have spoken openly about this now, even though you didn't necessarily feel comfortable doing this when you were younger, feeling that it was maybe a source of weakness. And you also mentioned that you didn't tell your wife the scary situations that you were in while you were deployed in Iraq. And so upon returning home, it probably became evident to her and your sons that you weren't the same and that things weren't okay. So could you just tell us about the experience of returning home from deployment and the emotional experience of dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder?
Yeah, so it's like, it's not related yet to PTSD, but like the strange thing when I came back home was that my elder son, which was at the time more or less like 3 years old, he kind of refused me. He jumped on the ginter and he said, like, he was looking at me like a total stranger. So this like struck me because it was just like 7 or 8 months when I was out of the home, and he didn't recognize me. So it again maybe like triggers something. What I mean in the upcoming 4 to 6 months, like I often increase the voice, and I often like say like not very nice words to my wife, and like even like loud sounds like make me feel uncomfortable, and family, they noticed, that I was not like this before, and now I'm kind of reacting or overreacting, to the simple life situations, where I shouldn't react like that. Yeah. And yeah, so at first we were silent, but then you are like, after a few months, you see that the situation is not changing. So we started to talk a little bit about that, and then I started to run. I started to run more and more because, like, alone at least I couldn't harm anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow after each run, I became much calmer. So my wife noticed the difference, and she said, okay, like if she see that I'm in trouble, she said, like, okay, let's put your shoes and go running, and after that you'll bring the solution, at least you'll be calmer. So this is how the running, like the second like phase of running came to my life. So, and kids, I don't know, like when they're young, they don't speak, but the situation which I described at the beginning was basically what they felt, they didn't feel that I'm their father, it took like few months to break the ice, and it's kind of super difficult for me because like, for me, it was strange, I've never experienced it. And I thought like, when you're leaving, your wife and coming back, she still recognizes that you her husband, but the kids don't, like, and it's like, it's very strange. Yeah. And my newborn baby, I saw him, after, I don't remember exactly, maybe 5 years after 5 months when he was born. So I don't know, there is some psychology behind that, that parents needs to be together, but I was not there, so I think like in the upcoming years, we have like some with like psychological, like, born trauma, which actually, was felt between us. Yeah. But, time heals, so everything finally turned well, we're like beautiful family, we understand each other, and maybe there is some, like kind of a tension time to time between us, and maybe it's related somehow, but not directly anymore.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I think also just like so relatable for a lot of people. I mean, my son now is almost 5 months, and just like thinking about not really seeing him for the first part of his life is difficult to think about. I'd love to hear a little bit more about, I mean, you mentioned that you were maybe having difficulties with anger, raising your voice with your family, saying mean things to your wife. And that was probably born out of a feeling of just stress and anxiety, even though you had been removed from that stressful and anxious situation of being in a combat zone. And I think, for me, trying to understand what it's like returning from war and the PTSD that's associated with that, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about like what the day-to-day feeling is like there psychologically. Is it just a matter of not being able to turn the anxiety off, and like you mentioned, with loud noises or slam doors, you're immediately thrown back into the memory of war? Or what's the specific experience like going through that?
So I think, now that my case was not the worst, like there is one strange thing, and I don't know if like everyone experienced that, but like maybe a lot of guys, it's kind of like this like Stockholm syndrome, but it's like opposite, to just not because I was kidnapped, but that I was in a war zone and I experienced bad thing. But the strange thing is that you want to return because back home you feel unnecessary, you feel like you are doing nothing, but the job which you are doing, it's not so important like the job which you are doing, on a mission, overseas. And this is super strange, because you're kind of trying to avoid the same experiences, like the bad experiences, like these explosions, like shootings, dead people. But at the same point, you want to go back, you want to go back. And I don't know, it's like kind of a psychological thing that you want to punish yourself. But like, honestly, I felt like super unnecessary, and like all the job which I did back home in a few months, it looked like for me like meaningless,
Yeah.
And I think this is like kind of confused me, and people around me. So yeah, and like, and besides that, of course, there is a side effects, like during the sleep you wake up because something triggers, the memories, like it's unconsciously, and you're like all sweating, or during the day, like I said, like New Year was a bit terrible, because it's like a lot of, the celebration, fireworks, and it's kind of brings your memory, your images, back, to the war zone. So I don't know. So for me, it was like this, I was super confused because I didn't want to go back, but at the same point, I felt like that I'm doing nothing useful back home and I wanted to return, and this is what happened actually in 2010, when I went to Afghanistan on my second mission.
So say more about that. I mean, was that your attempt to feel worthwhile again or to feel useful again? And did you experience similar traumatizing experiences over there in Afghanistan?
It's actually did it like for two purposes, like, because like kind of again, like to reject going on a mission is basically means that your career is over. So I was sent there, and I said, okay, I'll go there. But in my mind as well, like, like it's like I tried to do, or like to try to fight my all fears, by doing it. Like I had like in the past, like the fear to speak, like to do public speaking. Yeah. So I started to do public speaking. Yeah. I didn't like running, and I started to do running, like my mind works like this, if I have some fear, I need to do it and to overcome it. I never like uh, to see how it's called, like this height phobia or whatever, so I've never were a big fan to jump with parachutes, like, so I did like night jumps, because I feel that, the something you fear, you need to go there to fight it, to adapt it. Yeah. So with my first mission, which was kind of a really depressing, sad, and gave me hard times, I thought in the same way. Yeah, I need to go there and experience something different, to rewrite my data, in my brain, and actually this is what happened, like, so 2010 was kind of more successful mission because I don't know if I had a more experience, I didn't experience so many attacks than in 2007. Maybe it was contributing factor as well. So it was actually, it like lay out much better. Yeah. So yeah. And I came back home, not so traumatized, like no PTSD, I just did it, the only bad thing that I was like really missing my family, it's kind of, like second year when I'm not at home, and of course the kids are a little bit more grown up, and they recognize me on the return. So it was like kind of second mission was like kind of okay, and like I fight my demons, I kind of once again prove myself that you can rewrite your fears. And build up the confidence once again, you can heal by doing that. Yeah. And I did it. Yeah. Wow. But again, like in 2014 or 13, when I was serving with NATO forces already in the Szczecin in Poland, like they want me to be sent, again in Afghanistan to Afghanistan for a third time. And that time I said no. Like I said, like if you're sending me, like I'm like giving up, I'm like quitting. Yeah. Yeah. So luckily, wow. I was not, on the list, like, and just like, but it was not because they didn't send me, because it was just some lucky accident, which saved me from going there a third time or like quitting military at that time. Yeah.
And then your running career took off. So I want to get around to this transition because I think it'll be really interesting to hear about. But before we get to it, I feel compelled to ask, of course, you live in Eastern Europe and there's a war happening in Eastern Europe right now. What is the experience like living so close to Kyiv and to Ukraine at the moment right now? And does it bring back some of these ugly memories for you?
It doesn't bring, honestly, it doesn't bring, like, and there is, of course, the fear, there is preparation, by military, and especially the neighboring countries, and we're one of them, who has the borders. But first of all, it's kind of a different war, right? It's more brutal, it's more conventional, and if it will break, to the regions of NATO, so it's not only Lithuania, it's like basically all the bloc will be involved. And I think there is some like, like, of course, it's a sad moment, and like really in support, of the Ukrainian people, and like kind of, even like admire what we're doing, how we're fighting. But there is a good thing, for all the neighboring countries that we kind of woke up, and like we kind of see that we cannot rely, on like other countries, like we need to be ready ourselves, so this is kind of a good thing, for us, but like at the same time, like I'm like kind of having this mixed feelings, and I'm like really feeling bad about both sides, because like people are dying, on both sides, and usually in the wars, the people who caused the wars, usually they're not punished, so the young people, the recruits, on the Russian army, and the people on the Ukrainian side, they're dying, and the leadership, they're not, and I don't know how the war will unfold here. But like, if you look at all the big wars which happen, like the leaders, and the people who caused the war, usually they just, they were okay, but people around them, they died, so yeah, so it's not easy, like, but a lot of preparation going on here, and around the countries, and yeah, so
yeah,
it's kind of, I like, personally, me, I don't feel that like huge threat, like, and but maybe I'm wrong, sometimes,
right.
like, we're not the wisest person, to speak about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I'm not expecting you to solve the war right now, but thanks for sharing your perspective. It's obviously been a big thing in the news here in the United States, and I'm just, as somebody who didn't grow up under Soviet rule like you, and who has never been to a war zone like you. I mean, I felt like it was just an important thing to bring into the conversation, just to get your perspective. And I think you're right. There's people dying on both sides, and you have to have compassion for the people who didn't necessarily cause the war, but who are reaping the consequences of it. So moving back to your running career and the end of your military career, those two things sort of like seem to coincide. When you refused to go back to Afghanistan, I think you said that was around 2013 or 2014, that would seem to be around the time that you started taking trail running very seriously, and you established yourself as one of the best in the world. Can you take us into that moment and share any memories from it?
Yeah, so like, basically running came into my life, like a doctor, like a remedy, to solve the PTSD problem. But the more, and I started like my career, on the road, like, I was hooked, to run marathons, and like, I think like 2012, I established myself a goal, like kind of being still in the military, in the same situation, like in Poland. But I wanted to break the Lithuanian 100K record, which was not touched for 25 years. And that year, 2012, I did it, I think by 20 minutes. It's nothing impressive, because we, at that time, at least, we were not like a running country. Now we have a good runners, but at that time we were not, So I did it like, I think like 7 hours, 7 minutes, on the road, but it's like 50 loops, 2 kilometers, and this is kind of end my road career and started the trail running career. Yeah, because at that time I moved to Poland. Yeah, and the Poland kind of has the mountains, but the place where I stay close to the seaside. And it's still the same situation like in Lithuania. No mountains, like 70 meters, hills. The maximum which you can get. But we had a lot of races. Yeah, so I decided to give a try. And I did like few kind of famous races in the Poland, and I finished, I think, like 5th or 3rd. And I said, okay, like it goes much better than on the roads, So I said, okay, I probably need to put more effort and to see, where I can end up, And this is how I started to run, basically. Yeah? And my first international race, I think, was the Lavaredo in 2014, where I ran like still, with guys like Anton Krupichka, Mike Foots, and yeah, in this first race, like, because I was reading about them in magazines, like we were like kind of, like on all the magazines in 2014, and I said, okay, like I'll need to try, and like this specific race is kind of interesting, because I wrote to Christina, and I said, okay, I'm a runner from Lithuania, can you give me an entry, because I'm kind of didn't know the rules when you need to apply, and she said, yes, okay, like you are like fastest in your country on 100K, I'll give you the chance, So I came there. And I started to run, and I'm kind of leading the race, and I said, no, what's wrong with these guys? So what I'm doing not right, why they're like back, like, because we are so fast, And of course, like after like 30K or 40K, my wheels started to fall out, and Anton passed me, Mike passed, like, and other guys passed, it dropped like to 10 or something. And I said, okay, I need like to put all the shit together, and try to catch him. So I managed to finish third, after these two guys about whom I read in magazines, I was super happy,
Yeah,
like
I just
pumped,
pulled up the result.
result.
I just pulled up the result.
Yeah.
So for the audience, we're going to, again, talking about the 2014 Lavaredo, where Anton Krupicka finished first, Mike Foote finished second, two American legends, and then the great Gediminus Grinius, fresh off his retirement from the Lithuanian armed forces, takes home third place. So was that a pivotal moment for you where you sort of established your move from the roads to the trails and started chasing it? Because ultimately, fast forwarding to 2016, only a couple of years later, you won the Ultra Trail World Tour, which is effectively crowning you at least the long distance world champion for the season of 2016. What was that experience like for you? And also, like, was there some reflection as to how far you had come in this new chapter of your life after military service?
Yeah, actually, I didn't quit the military until 2018. I was still in military, in 2014 and like for upcoming 4 years. So this was a hard time to manage my family life, to manage the military life, and to be a runner. And I was not sure, which road to choose, like to stay in the military and to pursue my military career, or like to become a runner, or coach, like I am right now. But actually these doubts were cleared, by my wife. She said, like, do whatever you want, what's close to your heart, and this is how I chose, the runner's path. So, and I noticed, that from 2014, exactly after this race, I started to thinking to do better. I didn't think about it like a remedy anymore. I didn't think about it like to solve my mental problems. I started to think like athlete. I wanted to achieve better results, to get to better places, but still to run all these trail races with a passion, like not only grinding, because I think this is why a lot of guys like Anton and others, we are not running anymore because we put too much pressure on themselves. We run too many miles, they walk too hard, and their bodies or like minds, just couldn't keep with that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So after 2014, I noticed that, and it's like kind of strange because after this Lavaredo race, the Ultra Tour was established. I think it's exactly that year when the Ultra Tour was established. And I started to kind of flirt, with Marie at that time. And I said like, okay, can you put me on UTMB? So after Lavaredo, I did the UTMB, and another race I did was Grand Raid Reunion, Yep. So it's like kind of, my first year in ultra running, and I did like 3 ultra races in like 4 months or whatever, like 5 months, I finished like 5th at UTMB, just behind Jason Schlarp, and I don't remember who were like the first 3 guys. Yeah. And and I finished like 4th in Reunion, just losing to Aurelien Colette on the last downhill, like 10 seconds, I think, for the 3rd place. So it was like brutal, but at the same time I said, okay, I can run, I have something in me, which like push me, like through tough moments, definitely I'm not the best physical build, and this is why Red Bull didn't hire me later in 2016, because after all these testings, I just failed them. Yeah, but I had something, maybe it's mine, maybe it's my experience, in the military, what kind of let me push, through the tough moments and to compete, with the guys who are much better physical built and have, much better VO2 or like lactate threshold or whatever it is, or strength.
I wanted to ask you about that too, Gediminas, because you've been remarkably consistent throughout your career. And I wondered what you attribute that to, if it is like a psychological thing or if it comes from your experience being in the military and putting yourself through challenging training and challenging situations. What do you attribute your consistency to?
I cannot say that I am the wisest runner, yeah, because like I do maybe too much racing, maybe I'm not like doing big volumes in the training, but I am like racing a lot, through the year, and tackling a lot of races. But I think I'm taking good care about my body,
Mm-hmm.
and the more years I have, the more things I need to do, to let my body and my mind to drive me, and to do all these races with the same consistency, but I'm trying. Even like prior our podcast, I just finished my gym session, and I think like the gym contributes a lot to what I do, because I think it's the most neglected part of the runners, especially the new runners, because like the runners think that we need just to run, and of course it's maybe goes in the opposite direction of Jason Coop, who says like, okay, like you can do gym if you like to do gym, but I actually believe that this kind of protects me, it's basically makes me injury free, and I do a lot of gym, and not having mountains, like my substitute, it was just, like jumping on the box, climbing on the box, kind of mimicking the motion. And so I think that the gym is one of the things. Another thing is that I started running very late in my career. Yeah. So I'm kind of, I don't know, I think like, I prepared my body well to tackle all these kilometers, because I think like now, like I'm doing coaching and I see a lot of people, they want to like a lot of miles, and too fast, and they're like not ready even to run like 3 kilometers because we don't have athleticism, because I think like if you want to do ultras, at first you need to become a good athlete, and later just to become a good runner, because the body, and especially the mind should be ready for that. And for the young generation, for all these young runners for whom I'm racing right now, being like 43 or 42, whatever my age is. My wish is that they won't do it like, like so many races like I do, because we look at the people like me who are racing a lot, and if they think that we can do the same, but the young mind is like totally different than the older mind, and you need experience for that, you need to time to prepare yourself like a runner, because otherwise, I'll be still running and the young people will be gone again, so
Yeah.
and I recently actually had a chat with Scott Hawker, and because he's the guy whom I think I started to run and we're still running, and a lot of guys with whom we run like in 2014, they are not there anymore,
Mm-hmm.
for, I don't know, like for the mysterious disease, like adrenaline fatigue, whatever it's, like, or for some injuries, or some other like family reasons, like, and like, motivational reasons. Yeah. So, and you are the one as well, like, because I remember actually the first encounter with you on Western State course, you didn't have a best day, in 2015, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the first time. Yeah. So you're running kind of, for a long period of time as well, so
Yep.
you're kind of pretty consistent as well. Yeah? So I think what drives us and what, makes us, runners, who can run for such a long period of time is kind of a similar things,
Yeah.
and I want to do it, like then I'm speaking about my coach, like, I'm saying, and like always trying to stress that I don't want to win like the races. Like I want to just to run a happy, injury free for
Yeah.
like additional or upcoming like 20 years, and these victories, they're coming anyway, if you're
Yeah.
doing that, because consistency is like the factor which basically contributes, to success.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more about that evolution and specifically maybe about the process of aging. You mentioned that you're in your 40s now, but you're still competing at a very high level. And it sounds like maybe your psychology has changed a little bit, wanting to just go out and enjoy it rather than necessarily go out and win races anymore. How have you dealt with the process of aging? And I think especially as it relates to your competitive athletic career, because this is something that I think about quite a lot myself, about different ways that I can maintain the love of the sport, number one, but also how I can maintain competitiveness over time.
I think, like maybe the passion which we have, like maybe it's like a very like, like the beautiful world, just passion, but it's just, I don't know. I just like to be in the mountains. I like to be with myself, and like, I think always, like even when I'm training, I'll try to enjoy. I'm not thinking about the races, or how well I'm going to do in particular races. Of course, I like to do well in the races, and I have this like spark in me, when on the finish line, on the start line, like I'm like totally into the race. I like to compete. I like the vibes, which everyone is spreading. But like, honestly, I think like I still can compete for coming like 8 years. Maybe a lot of people can laugh from that, but I think like even like in the nowadays sport, when the younger people are coming, with a better physical build, of course not in the 50K, not 30K, but like in the long distance, like 100 miles, or even longer races, you can do it like easily. And I think with age, you just increase the distance, and you still experience the same vibes, the same victories, the same win. So I think like, you need just to keep this love for the sport, or love for the running itself, because this is like actually was the case with me in 2021. I went like, or 20, I think. I went to Madeira. It was like pandemic year, so we packed everything, and with family we went to Madeira for 4 months. Yeah? And because I was preparing for Patagonia run in Argentina, and I said, okay, Madeira is beautiful. It's I can train there. There is no restrictions. We have the mountains, and but I started to feel fatigue. And started kind of be upset with what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I started like just grinding, I'm going to training, I'm implementing the training, but I have no joy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed that, but I was not brave enough to stop, So I kind of got all the signals from my body and mind that something is wrong with me, that I need probably a good rest, because maybe I'm tired or fatigue or whatever it is. But I didn't stop, I started, I still kept pushing, grinding each and every day. And when my injury happened,
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, it's kind of a strange, because I think this is like the best what illustrates, mind and body connection, you're not happy, you're not brave enough to stop. Okay, so body and mind will find a way to stop, and I
so true.
actually did.
It's so true, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And it's kind of a curse, because I kind of broke my meniscus into pieces, it's like radial and horizontal tear. But at the same time, I had 1 year to rethink everything, to rebuild my body and to rebuild my confidence. And I think to rebuild the confidence is the most important thing, that, because body is easy, like you're like just doing particular exercises, you're like disciplined, motivated, and you can do it. Yeah. But with my mind is more difficult. Yeah. But what happened, my passion, and my love for running returned, and 2022 was a good example of that, and again, I had like great victories, great races, great trainings, like a lot of fun in the mountains, and I'm still like, when I'm thinking mountains, I'm shaking, it's like to drink a coffee in the morning, I feel the same, I'm fresh. So this is what I'm thinking that, like this, like 2020, 2021, when I was like coming back from injury, it's kind of, I don't know, like made me the phoenix who raised from ashes again, and who is enjoying what he's doing, So I think like these bad moments doesn't happen, accidentally,
Yeah.
Everything has a purpose and meaning in lives,
Yeah.
And I think this is contributes as well, because I'm trying to answer to your question, and this is kind of contributes, to continuity and consistency, which I have in my training and racing.
Good. So then fast forwarding to just a couple of weeks ago, as you're emerging into this new re-energized Gediminus Grinius, you finished third place at the Doi Inathon 100 miler, the Thailand by UTMB Asian major on the UTMB World Series. Another fantastic podium finish for you. Another trademark Gediminas, consistent, sort of high performance result for your resume. How did it feel to be back on the podium at a big international 100-mile race? And did it confirm to you that the trials and tribulations of 2021 were behind you?
Yes, it's actually reassured me, that I still can run at the high level, and it's kind of this race has a lot of like mixed feelings as well, because I felt like super great, doing my training blog because I stay in Thailand for 1 month, I have amazing like 3 weeks of training. I did the trail running camps with people over there and I feel amazing. But like 1 week before actually everything started in India, because like I did one race in Seoul, like in October. I won that race, and like as I'm traveling a lot, and I haven't been at home from May, we decided with my wife to visit our friends in India, and to have some time together there. Yeah. So I went there. We spent like 3 awesome weeks, and on the almost the last day of our stay, I decided to go and run one trail. And and India is kind of diverse, very diverse country. So the trails are the same, and suddenly, I'm running this trail and trail ends, and I said, okay, I still, like the trail runners mentality, I need to reach that peak, which I have in my mind. So I'm kind of bushwhagging, there, like, and I'm reaching that peak, but it's already too late, and it's dark and I have just my mobile phone, so I started to run with this like mobile phone light, and almost at the bottom, I sprained my ankle like super badly, and obviously, like I think I'm not the first runner who is doing that, and ending up like this, and of course, like for my athletes, all the time take the alarms, and I didn't take one. So I sprained this ankle, and I'm going to Thailand, and I'm training. And what happens that I'm compensating a lot of my Pyrenees. And 1 week before the Thailand race, like it breaks totally, like I ran 5K and like I felt like sharp pain and I walked back like 5K. And like I'm having 1 week to the race and I'm thinking what to do, So, okay, like at least for me, the best therapy is like shockwave therapy and needles, and like luckily in Chiang Mai, they have a good place, the thing which they're using, Neymar use the same, so it's kind of good. And I'm doing these treatments, and I'm not sure if I'm going to start in the race, because I just cannot run, I'm going to run 1K, walking back home, like, okay, so I do bicycle, it's okay. I walk backwards on treadmill, it's okay. Running, no way.
Yeah.
So like 2 days before the race, I'm going to Scotty Hawker to run and I'm managing to do 1 hour. And I said, okay, like maybe because my coach, my doctor said, don't run, it makes no sense to run. But, I have experience from Grand Slam in US when I ran my second Western state with a calf strain from Robinson Flat and I managed it. And I said, okay, like I'll try, and it goes how it goes, So in Thailand race, I'm running like, I'm starting very conservatively, like I'm happy with my feelings. The Pyrenees barking at me, but it's manageable, and I'm starting to overcome the guys. And it's like my first race in 2014. I'm thinking, why they're running so slow? What they're expecting here, like I don't know what game they're playing, but I'm feeling really good, So I'm passing the guys, and I'm feeling super great and happy till kilometer 90. And when Pyrenees says, okay, Gediminas, you're done, So and from kilometer 90, I basically didn't run much uphill. I could run downhills, I could run like flats. Uphill, it was a problem. And usually
I was following on your Instagram, and it seemed like your calf was bothering you. But I mean, it goes to show. I mean, you pull off a podium performance after, running another 70 kilometers or whatever it was on a bum calf and finishing third place in under 23 hours at that very difficult 100-mile race. I mean, it shows you the toughness and consistency of Gediminas. How did the race, did it feel like it was, because I've heard that it's a fantastic event. And obviously now as an Asian major on the UTMB World Series, Did it live up to that designation, do you think?
I think it's like nice run, and it's kind of suits my strength. It's kind of a western state, of Thailand, because you don't see much surroundings, because basically you're running during the night. Yeah, but what I'm comparing with western state, because it's kind of a single trails, wide trails, all more or less runnable. And this is what kind of upset me, because like I'm usually good at this like long, not huge, great uphills, because I'm running and usually I'm passing the people there. And this time I couldn't run. But you're not going high to the mountains. Yeah. So basically you see nothing. You see just like the road and the forest, so it's not like super beautiful, like the Mont Blanc race, or the or Eiger. But it's like suits my strength, and it's hot race, like I don't know, like the heat was maybe like 35 degrees or 40 degrees, with a high humidity. And this is what I like, and this is why I chose this race, and yeah, but like it's very well organized, like it's one of the best organized races, everything well marked, so it's kind of like really deserves to be the majors of Asia.
Sweet. So another thing I'd love to hear you talk about, Gediminas, is the importance of your family as it relates to your athletic career, because it seems like you guys travel together oftentimes as a unit, and I know, as a father of two growing boys yourself, that you probably want to show a good example to them as to what they can accomplish in their lives. I'd just love to hear you talk about the significance of family in your athletic career.
Right. It's like super, they're like kind of part of my career, because when I started to run, like we're like super young, and like Ginter supported me all the time, like 100%, she gave up her job, just to let me do what I want. So I'm like super grateful for that. And in all the races we took our boys, from the very, very young ages. And, maybe I made a small mistakes, but I think like who doesn't, but I tried to kind of force at the beginning them to be the runners, in their future, which they totally disagree, but like I learned that, by heart, they showed me like few times that they don't want to pursue this career. So, so, and I'm kind of okay with that, but my job, like a parent, I wanted to show that the mountains exist, what life in the mountains is, what you can experience, no matter if you're a hiker or runner or you just like hanging out there. And I think my both sons, they love mountains. The younger a little bit more than the elder one, because currently, like, I don't know, like I'm considering them more like my brothers, like the sons, because we're kind of the same height, same clever, having our own ideas, one son pursues, goalkeeper career, another, not sure yet what, but, they love to be in the mountains. Yeah. Especially the young one, and next week we are going to Liguria, for some goalkeeper training, to spend some time in the mountains. So I don't know, in the past when we were younger, we have no choice. They were like, just come here. We're going in the car, and we're driving and we're doing the race. We're supporting, cheering, and for me, it was much easier because I was not running, from aid station to aid station. I was running from aid station to my family, to my family, and when it's like 100-mile races, became much easier to handle, because it was like basically 16 times more or less, to your family and the race is done, so it's easier for your mind. And, when you do something for the people who you love, and what they do for you, they create like really positive energy, around you. And even the smiles which we're exchanging, the hugs which we're exchanging, like pushing you through, through the tough moments. And tough moments is kind of inevitable in the ultra races. Yeah. So we hugely contributed, to my racing career, like let's say till the 2017. Yeah. And after that, we decided that they don't want to do it anymore. We prefer to go to the Spain for football camp, to Croatia with friends, while I'm in Austria, and, to invite them to support me, it's become much more difficult. Yeah?
Yeah.
And Ginter as well, she kind of contributed herself now for their education, and being more at home than I do. So it's kind of changed, yeah. But the beginning of career is was super important, and even now, to do the good in the races, I'm trying to invite them, and in the most important events, if we can, usually they're traveling with me and giving me good vibes and energy. Yeah, but it's a little bit changed,
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, it's fun to follow along on your Instagram. You do a great job of showing how your family, is included in all the trips and accomplishments that you have. And it seems like you guys share a really special bond. And as a new father, it's fun for me to talk about with you. So let's finish by talking about what's next for you. Obviously, you're coming back into your own now. You're healthy. You're coming off a great podium finish at the Thailand 100-mile race. I'm sure you're taking a little bit of an off season now, looking ahead towards 2023. What are you excited about for next year?
Actually, I'll start the next year where I left. So in February, I'm going to Thailand to do this another race by UTMB, Amazon Jungle.
Yeah, the new one. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of I think it's second or third year, which we're throwing it. But I think it will be more like adventure, the one which I did this year in Guadalupe, because it's kind of jungles, snakes, more heat, more humidity, and a lot of bushwhacking, mud, if it's raining. And what I heard is sometimes it's not very runnable, so it kind of suits my style, and it will be more like adventure to explore the south. Because this in Hanoi was in the north, so I'm heading to the south, and I'll be exploring Thailand and a little bit Malaysia. Yeah, this is where the race goes. So this is where I'll kick my 2023 season. Yeah, but of course, the main goal for me is now UTMB. As I earned the place, so kind of I have a focus. And I did UTMB many times, and I think in 2017 or 18, I said, okay, it's the last time, because how many times I can do that. But kind of in 2021, I guess, I was there, and I was almost crying, seeing this guy's running, and I said, okay, I need to accomplish another one UTMB, and I tried this year, but unsuccessfully. Yeah, I had the problem, which is very strange, in my life, I have blisters on the race twice. And it was the same race. It was UTMB 2015 and UTMB 2022. The same place, going to San Gervais, on this a little bit steep downhill, but I don't know why, And this year I was running there, and I kind of felt this heat under the soul. I said, oh, mamma mia, I know what is going to happen, And the first time, in 2015, it's funny, I ran till Trent or Valorsine, and I dropped there. I was still in top 10, there, but I couldn't, I killed my quads because of a change of biomechanics, because I switched all the weight, on the toes, and this is what happens. You know how it is. Yeah. And this year I said, okay, I'm not going to play the same game, and I stopped after 70 or 60K, because I felt the same symptoms, and I said, okay, I can suffer, but it just makes no sense. Yeah. So the big goal for 23 is UTMB. I want to do it kind of good race, and then to say bye-bye to UTMB, in Chamonix. So hopefully 2023 will be the year.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I'll be standing on the start line next to you. It'd be good fun to do that.
Yeah, I think it'll be. And yeah, I'll do some shorter. Actually, most likely the decision is still pending, but 99% that I'm coming to canyons in US.
Oh, yeah? But, awesome.
Yeah, because this is the major for North America. The Vibram will be there from North America, and some guys are coming, from Europe as well. I said to my coach that I make a final decision, after the Thailand race. But currently I think that everything will be cool. I'm already looking for the tickets, to San Francisco, and like I want to really do, opposite course, to have more uphill running rather than downhill running.
Yeah. Will you do the 100-miler or will you do the 100K?
No, I'll do a miler. Like I'm 100-miler guy, like Jeff Browning, Totally. Are you going to be there as well?
Well, I mean, I would plan to be. It is in my backyard now. Of course, Harmony and I just moved back down to California, so it would be unwise for me to not be in attendance. I won't be running the 100-miler, that's for sure. But it would be good to connect while you're here in the U.S. and in California. But Gediminas, it's great to have you, back on top in the sport. And yeah, I mean, we've known each other for a long time, but yeah, it's great to have you on the podcast. I appreciate you coming on, sharing so much about your story.
Thank you, Nilan. And hopefully see you in Auburn, right?
See you in Offer.